Prologue. The stars had always been humanity's silent witnesses. When Earth fell, its lands choked by greed, its skies poisoned by ambition, the black oceans of space became both prison and salvation. Fragile ships carried fragile hopes, scattering humanity across the stars in a desperate gamble to survive. Among the countless worlds claimed in their exodus, Nix 12 stood apart. A lush, untamed jewel in the Orion Arm, its emerald woodlands and shimmering waterways promised redemption. For the settlers who braved its wilderness, Nix 12 was a chance to rebuild. For the Hyperion Mining Corporation, it was profit. To them, planets were commodities, their resources calculated to the last decimal point. Settlers like those in the Crofton River Valley weren't part of the equation. The Hyperion Mining Corporation had other plans. When Hyperion's drones arrived, their message was clear: Nix 12 belonged to the corporation, and they intended to take it, by any means necessary. Thomas Ellis stood on the porch of his cabin, watching the morning mist rise from the Crofton River. This place had been his dream, a sanctuary for his wife, Marianne, and their children, Lila and Sam. The golden fields of grain swayed gently in the breeze, their lifeline to survival. Thomas listened to the chirping of the zeta birds, with their melodious songs, mingled with the rustling leaves of the towering everwoods. It had such a soothing, calming effect on him. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the crisp morning air. The scent of damp earth and fresh pine filled his lungs, grounding him in this sanctuary he had fought so hard to protect. Marianne emerged from the cabin, her long auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She carried a steaming mug of coffee, its aroma mingling with the forest scents.
"Morning,"
she said, handing him the mug.
"Morning,"
he replied, taking a sip and savoring the warmth.
"The kid's still asleep?"
"Lila's up, drawing again,"
Marianne said with a soft chuckle.
"Sam's out like a log."
Thomas smiled, picturing Lila at her desk, lost in one of her fantastical worlds. She had a gift for art, capturing Nix 12's beauty with each stroke of her pencil.
"They deserve some peace."
Marianne nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon where the sun began its ascent.
"How long you think it will last?"
Thomas shook his head slightly.
"Let's not worry about that today.
He reached for her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze.
Let's just enjoy this."
She sighed, but smiled back at him. They stood there in companionable silence, watching as the morning unfolded around them. The faint hum of an approaching drone shattered the peace. Thomas stepped forward, his stomach tightening as the sleek black machine descended. Its cold, metallic voice echoed across the valley.
"This is Hyperion Mining Corporation. The Crofton River Valley and its resources now fall under corporate jurisdiction. You have 72 hours to vacate. Non-compliance will result in enforcement actions."
Marianne emerged from the cabin, clutching her apron.
"Thomas, what do we do?"
Thomas didn't answer immediately.
"How can they do that? Is that even legal?"
he thought. His hands gripped the porch railing, knuckles white. He'd built this cabin with his own hands. He turned to Marianne, his voice firm but laced with quiet despair.
"We stay."
Her voice trembled.
"And when they come for us?" "Tomas, this isn't a fight we can win."
Thomas looked away, his shoulders slumping under the weight of her words. He finally turned back to her, his voice quieter but unyielding.
"And what life would that be, Marianne? Running, hiding, losing everything piece by piece? No, this is our home. I won't let Tem take it without a fight."
From inside the cabin, Lila, 10, watched her parents argue. She gripped her younger brother's hand, whispering,
"It's going to be okay, Sam. Dad won't let anything happen to us."
The Crofton River had dried to a trickle, its lifeblood siphoned away by Hyperion's pumps. The once vibrant fields wilted under the unrelenting sun, and panic rippled through the settlement. Hyperion had made its move and the settlers were deprived of the river and its water. The settlers couldn't believe what they saw. That night, Thomas led a small group of settlers to the Hyperion pumping station that drained their water. Armed with hunting rifles and desperate resolve, they moved through the darkness like shadows. They would get rid of those pumps and get their water back. The plan worked until Hyperion's drones descended. Spotlights cut through the night, followed by the sharp crack of automated turrets.
Fall back.
Thomas shouted, but the command came too late. A bullet tore through his leg, and he crumpled to the ground. Blood soaked his jeans as he gasped in pain. 2 settlers dragged him to safety, while others covered the retreat. The pumps were damaged, the water was flowing again in the Crofton River, but the cost was high. Thomas lay on a stretcher, his face pale, as Marianne held his hand.
Was it worth it?
She asked, her voice barely audible. Thomas looked at her, his eyes clouded with pain but defiant.
It's our home. If we don't fight for it, no one will.
Celestia City, Nyx 12 capital. In the neon-lit sprawl of Celestia City, Ambassador Elijah Lorne of the Terran Civilian Nations and Liaison to Space Interstellar Alliance, shortly referred to as the SIA, stood at the edge of his office, gazing at the skyline. Beyond the glittering towers of corporate might, Nyx 12's wilderness stretched into the horizon, scarred by conflict. A chime interrupted his thoughts. Lorne turned to the holographic display as his chief aide, Kara Haynes, appeared.
Hyperion moved on Crofton River Valley.
She said grimly.
Their security forces attacked at dawn. Casualties are mounting.
Lorne's jaw tightened.
The settlers?
Lorne closed his eyes briefly, the weight of the news pressing down on him.
Attacking settlers? Are they crazy?
They're framing the settlers as insurgents and are lobbying to expand their enforcement zones.
Lorne turned back to the window, his voice low.
They'll keep pushing until there is nothing left to take.
Kara hesitated.
Ambassador, if we intervene,
We face a violent conflict.
Lorne finished. He turned to face her, his expression hardening.
But if we do nothing, we abandon these people to Hyperion's mercy.
Kara nodded. She looked at the ambassador, wondering what was going on in his mind. Kara lingered in the doorway.
why Nyx 12?
She asked softly.
Why fight so hard for this place?
Elijah looked up, his expression distant.
Years ago, I was stationed on Epsilon 4. A struggling colony, but full of hope. When a mining corporation moved in, the settlers resisted. I thought I could mediate, calm things down. But when tensions escalated, they told me to leave. For my own safety.
Elijah sighed deeply. His gaze darkened.
I ran once, and it costed lives. I won't make that mistake again. Nyx 12 is their home, and I'm staying to fight for it.
Smoke rose over the Crofton River Valley as Hyperion's forces descended. Armored vehicles crushed barricades, drones rained fire from above, and the acrid scent of burning grain filled the air. Inside their cabin, Thomas and Marianne scrambled to gather their children.
Thomas, we have to go.
Marianne shouted, clutching Sam tightly. He limped to the window, his heart sinking at the sight of Hyperion's troops closing in.
They're too close.
An explosion rocked the cabin. Flames licked at the walls. Thomas turned to Marianne, his voice trembling.
Get them out.
Marianne smashed the window with a chair, helping Lila and Sam climb through.
Run to the woods.
She urged, her voice breaking.
Don't look back. But go.
The children hesitated, then ran, their tears falling as they disappeared into the trees. Behind them, the cabin groaned and collapsed in a fiery roar, taking their parents with it. Lila and Sam huddled in the shadows of the forest, the glow of their burning home still visible. Exhausted and terrified, they clung to each other as the sounds of drones grew louder. Then, a new sound emerged, the low hum of a dropship cutting through the trees. The children looked up as the ship descended, its lights bathing them in a warm glow. The ramp lowered, and figures emerged, SIA, Space Interstellar Alliance soldiers, weapons raised, but postures calm. Lila? Sam, one of them called gently. Lila stood, her voice trembling.
That's us.
As they were led aboard, Lila glanced back one last time at the distant ruins of her home. It was gone now. But somewhere beyond the trees, a man named Elijah Lorne was preparing to fight for what little they had left.
The Senate won't back an open confrontation with Hyperion.
Kara said.
Not when they hold the majority of mining contracts across Alliance worlds. You'll be outnumbered.
Elijah turned to face her, his expression hard.
And let them outnumber me. Let them debate while settlers bury their dead.
And Hyperion?
She asked cautiously. His gaze darkened, his voice low.
Let me deal with Hyperion.
In a sleek boardroom orbiting Nix 12, the Hyperion Mining Corporation's regional director, Darius Kane, watched the same holographic map. His version was cleaner, devoid of sentiment, marked only by resource estimates and strategic objectives. The Crofton River Valley pulsed in golden highlights, indicating a successful acquisition.
Resistance has been neutralized.
A corporate officer reported, her voice clipped.
The valley is secure. Mining operations can begin in 72 hours.
Kane leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. His sharp, angular features gave him the appearance of a predatory bird, always watching, always calculating.
And the survivors?
A few scattered into the forest,
she replied.
Children among them. Unarmed. They won't last long.
Kane's lips curved into a faint smile.
See that they don't. The fewer witnesses, the cleaner the operation.
And the Alliance?
The officer asked.
Their ambassador may push back.
Kane's smile widened.
Elijah Lorne? He'll bark, but he won't bite. The Alliance can't afford to lose Hyperion. They'll grumble, file complaints, maybe even send a team to retrieve those children. But in the end, they'll do nothing of consequence.
He stood, smoothing the lapels of his tailored suit.
Proceed with Phase 2.
The Vaelor Command Center aboard the Drashull was a masterpiece of cold precision. Golden threads pulsed faintly along the chamber's vaulted ceiling, casting an eerie glow over angular consoles suspended above the obsidian floor. The air was heavy, every sound, every word, every breath, absorbed by the oppressive silence. Commander Barlek stood at the helm, his tall, angular frame bathed in the golden light. His golden eyes, sharp and unblinking, were fixed on the holographic image of Nix 12 spinning gently in the air. To him, the planet was more than a resource, it was an affront. Its chaotic sprawl of human settlements, their crude manipulation of nature, embodied everything the Vaelor despised.
Commander,
An officer announced, bowing slightly.
the SIA command has acknowledged our hail. Their leaders are on screen.
Barlek straightened, his silver-trimmed uniform immaculate as ever. He smoothed its crisp folds with practiced ease, then turned toward the central console. The holographic image shifted to reveal Arcadia Station, humanity's last major foothold in the sector. Its command center was utilitarian, with exposed metal beams and screens glowing with activity. To Barlek, it looked like a crude monument to disorder. Two figures faced the screen. High Commander Callista Morgan, military strategist of the MMF, Martian military force, stood rigid, her dark eyes calm yet defiant. Beside her, General Asher Vance, Sia, leaned casually against the console, his smirk betraying none of the tension rippling through the room.
This is Commander Varlek of the Vaelor Consortium.
Varlek began, his voice even and deliberate, each syllable sharpened by disdain.
Explain your encroachment into Vaelor-protected space.
Callista held his gaze, her voice steady.
Commander Varlek. This is Commander Callista Morgan of the Martian Military Force and also speaking for the Space Interstellar Alliance.
She briefly looked at General Asher, who nodded, his eyes almost closed.
Nix-12 is Alliance territory, recognized by treaty. If anyone has violated borders, it's your ships.
Treaties.
Varlek repeated the word slowly, as though testing its weight.
Your species clings to fragile words, scrawled on parchment, as though they can shield you from consequence. Nix-12 is a wound festering in this galaxy, infected by your primitive ambitions. The Vaelor Consortium will not allow it to spread.
General Asher straightened, crossing his arms.
Let's not pretend this is about balance or infection. You're here because you want the planet's resources.
Varlek's golden eyes narrowed, his expression unchanging.
No, General. Correction. Nix-12 disrupts the natural harmony of this sector. You infest it like vermin, stripping its essence for fleeting gain. We will restore balance.
Callista's nails dug into her palms, hidden behind her back. She took a step forward.
Nix-12 isn't just territory, Commander. It's home to millions of people, entire families who've made a life there. We won't stand by while you tear it apart.
Varlek tilted his head slightly, as if studying her. A flicker of irritation crossed his face before the cold mask returned.
Your defiance is predictable. Your species is driven by chaos, unable to comprehend the greater order. Withdraw your presence from Nix-12, and the Vaelor might overlook this trespass. Refuse.
His lips curled into a faint, humorless smile.
And you will learn the cost of disobedience.
You have no jurisdiction here whatsoever. These treaties were negotiated with your government. If you have a problem, take it up with them. Maybe you will learn something about obedience yourself.
Callista fumed. Asher took a step forward, his usual levity gone.
You're talking about war.
Call it what you will.
Varlek replied, his voice cutting through the room like a blade.
Nix-12 will fall. It is not a question of if, but when.
Callista's voice was steel.
Then you'll find us ready.
Varlek leaned closer, his regal facade cracking for just a moment, revealing something darker.
We shall see.
You shall see indeed.
Callista disconnected the hologram. She gazed at Asher, her eyes in flame. Asher nodded in understanding. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the SIA command center. Officers scrambled to update fleet readiness reports, their hushed voices filling the room with urgency. Callista turned to face Asher, her shoulders square and her expression unreadable.
So, what is the recommendation of the MMF?
He asked. She exhaled, allowing a sliver of weariness to surface before steeling herself.
We prepare for war, alert the fleet, deploy reconnaissance to the planet's perimeter, and contact civilian leaders on Nix-12. Start evacuation protocols for the outer colonies. Get some laser defensive turrets. Get some warships out here too. They always come at the worst possible time.
Asher frowned.
Evacuation? If we move civilians, we're signaling that we're expecting a fight.
Callista replied sharply. Asher's smirk returned, faint but approving.
Fair enough.
Callista turned back to the command console. Her voice softened, almost to herself. Commander Callista Morgan stood firm.
Prepare the fleets, she ordered. They're coming, and we'll be ready.
Beyond the reach of the Space Interstellar Alliance and the Order of the Vaelor warlords lay the Fringe, a sprawling expanse where survival hung by a thread. It was a place untouched by law and reason, where the ruins of ancient empires drifted in silence, their legacies reduced to whispers. Scavengers, pirates, and renegades prowled these voids like predators, carving existence from the galaxy's forgotten bones. Across the galactic frontier, an uneasy silence blanketed the scattered outposts and colonies. It was a silence laden with unspoken fears and unanswered questions. Ships dispatched to map uncharted territories or plunder resources began to vanish, leaving behind only fragmented distress calls. In the shadow of a dying star, its light bleeding crimson into the void, the wayfarer drifted. The ship's reinforced hull gleamed faintly, its purpose-built design defiant against the desolation around it. On the bridge, Captain Lyle Vran leaned forward in his chair, his sharp green eyes scanning the main display. The muted hum of the ship's systems underscored the tense stillness as the crew worked around him.
Captain,
Torres called out from her station, her voice taut with unease.
We've picked up a signal.
Lyle straightened, his tone clipped.
Distress beacon?
Not exactly,
Torres replied, her fingers flying over her console. Data streams reflected in her wide eyes.
It's erratic. The energy readings are off the charts. Nothing in our databanks matches the pattern.
Chapter 2. The SIA cruiser Argus drifted through the uncharted void, a ghost slipping between the cracks of the galaxy's forgotten corners. Its engines thrummed with a steady, almost hypnotic rhythm, a deceptive calm against the chaos of the galaxy beyond. Far from the well-worn trade routes, the Argus wove its way through asteroid fields and cosmic storms, evading the ever-watchful gaze of the Vaelor consortium. The mission was clear: deliver Kara Lorne, daughter of the SIA's chief ambassador, to Nix 12 without tipping the Vaelor off to her presence. On the bridge, Captain Draven loomed over the glowing navigation display, his broad shoulders tense and rigid. The scar above his left eyebrow twitched faintly as he analyzed the map's shifting trajectories.
Maintain course,
he ordered, his voice a quiet but unyielding authority that cut through the hum of the ship. His eyes didn't waver from the screen, tracking every blip and trajectory with the precision of a predator.
Captain, asteroid field ahead.
Lieutenant Merrick reported, his fingers gliding over his console with nervous efficiency.
It's dense. Should I adjust our trajectory?
Draven didn't hesitate.
No. We'll thread through. Altering course risks detection.
Merrick glanced up, doubt flickering across his features.
Aye, Captain,
he said, though his jaw tightened as he complied. The risk was clear, and he could feel the tension settling over the bridge like a storm cloud. In her quarters, Kara Lorne paced the narrow space, her footsteps muffled by the hum of the Argus's engines. The room was stark, a far cry from the sprawling hall she was used to, and the isolation pressed on her like a weight. She stopped at the viewport, her reflection staring back at her, the weary eyes, the set jaw, the delicate lines of her face that reminded her she was seen more as cargo than a person. The stars beyond offered no comfort, only a cold reminder of the void she was navigating, physically and emotionally. The soft hiss of the door broke her thoughts. Ensign Greer stepped in, his professional mask barely concealing the sympathy in his eyes.
Miss Lorne,
he said gently.
We're approaching an asteroid field. Things might get rough.
Kara didn't turn.
How much longer until Nix 12?
3 days, if everything goes to plan.
Greer replied, moving a little closer.
I know this isn't easy.
Her reflection in the glass didn't flinch, though her voice carried the weariness of experience.
This isn't my first time being locked away for my own safety.
She finally turned to meet his gaze, her tone softening just enough to betray her exhaustion.
But thanks for letting me know.
Greer opened his mouth to respond, but his comlink crackled sharply, interrupting him. Lieutenant Merrick, the ship's navigation officer's voice, cut through the air.
All hands to stations. Alert, possible threat on intercept course.
Greer's expression darkened.
Stay here, lock the door.
Kara clenched her fists as he left, the sharp echo of the door sealing her in once more. The ship's vibrations shifted subtly, a faint tremor that hinted at danger. Her breath quickened, and she moved to the bunk, gripping the frame as if bracing for the inevitable. Every sound seemed magnified, each second stretching into an eternity. On the bridge, the atmosphere was electric with tension.
Unidentified object on an intercept course.
Merrick reported, his voice tight with urgency. His eyes flicked between the sensors and the tactical display. Draven's shoulders stiffened, his voice calm but cold.
Vaelor? Unknown.
Merrick hesitated.
Could be debris, but it's moving too fast to be random.
Draven exhaled through his nose, his jaw clenching.
Raise shields. Prepare for anything.
The ship vibrated faintly as the shields powered up, the hum resonating through the Argus's hull. On the tactical display, a lone dot blinked steadily, closing in with alarming speed.
It's not debris.
Merrick said grimly.
It's a probe.
Take it out before it transmits.
The Argus's weapons hummed to life, a barely perceptible growl of energy building as the targeting system locked on. Outside, the probe, a sleek, silver dart, moved with eerie precision, as if it were aware of its impending destruction. A pulse of energy erupted from the Argus, striking the probe dead on. It shattered in a cascade of glowing fragments, the pieces scattering like dying embers into the void.
Direct hit.
Merrick confirmed, though his tone carried no relief. His gaze remained fixed on the screen, where no additional blips appeared, yet.
If it transmitted, they'll know we're here.
Draven's expression hardened.
We can't assume otherwise. Keep us moving. Deeper into the field.
As the Argus dove into the asteroid belt, the hull groaned in protest, the sharp turns testing its resilience. Massive rocks tumbled past the viewports, some close enough to scrape the shields. The crew worked in tense silence, every movement deliberate and synchronized. In her quarters, Kara felt the sharp lurch of the ship as it maneuvered through the asteroids. Her breath caught, and she tightened her grip on the bunk. The alarms faintly echoing in the distance only heightened her unease. The silence that followed wasn't comforting, it was suffocating, a reminder of the dangers lurking in the void. She moved back to the viewport, her reflection distorted by the faint shimmer of the shields. Was this her fate, to always be at the mercy of forces beyond her control? She'd been told this mission was vital, her role crucial to preventing war. But the weight of being a pawn, valuable, yet expendable, was almost unbearable. Back on the bridge, Marek's voice broke the silence.
If the Vaelor were out here, that probe wasn't alone. They'll send more.
Draven's eyes remained fixed on the chaotic asteroid field ahead, his expression unreadable.
Then we'll stay ahead of them. No mistakes.
The Argus slipped deeper into the uncharted expanse, its sleek form vanishing into the darkness. The hum of the engine seemed louder now, a fragile heartbeat in the oppressive silence of space. For the crew, survival was a matter of skill and precision. But for Kara, watching the void swallow them whole, the question loomed like a shadow: had they already been found? The quiet hiss of the door snapped her out of her thoughts. She turned, surprised to see Captain Draven step inside unannounced. His broad frame filled the doorway, his face unreadable, but heavy with purpose.
We've cleared the asteroid field,
he said, stepping into the room. His gaze briefly swept over the sparse quarters, before settling on her.
But that probe? It's a problem. We need to pick up speed.
Kara turned back to the viewport.
I know what's at stake.
Do you?
Draven folded his arms, his piercing eyes searching her face for cracks in her resolve.
If the Vaelor realize what we're doing here, it won't just be the Argus they come after. They'll target every station, every alliance.
Draven's expression darkened.
Holding them back isn't victory, it's a delay. And delays cost lives.
Kara turned back to the stars, her thoughts returning to Nyx 12. Her voice was quieter now, contemplative.
I'd like to see it. Nyx 12, I mean. For myself.
You will,
Draven said, his tone softer than before.
But not yet.
The intercom crackled, cutting through the moment. Marek's voice came sharp and urgent.
Captain, we've got another signal.
Draven straightened immediately.
What kind of signal?
Merrick replied.
Could be another probe. Could be something else.
Kara stood, her pulse quickening. Together, they moved swiftly toward the bridge. The crew was already in motion, the hum of the ship punctuated by the sharp beeps of consoles and the low murmur of orders. The main display flickered, revealing a faint blip steadily closing in on their position.
4,000 clicks and closing,
Merrick reported. His fingers danced over the console, his focus absolute.
no transponder signal.
Could it have detected us?
Kara asked, her voice low but tense. Merrick shook his head.
Unknown. It's not broadcasting, yet. It's turning away.
Merrick finally reported, his voice taut with disbelief. Relief flickered through the crew like a whisper.
No sign of transmission.
Draven's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the screen.
Track it until it's out of range. If it so much as blinks, I want to know.
The bridge eased back into controlled focus, though the tension remained. Kara glanced at Draven, who gave her a brief nod before returning his attention to the navigation display. As the engines hummed beneath her feet, one thought clung to her mind with cold certainty: they weren't out of danger yet. Lieutenant Marek's fingers danced across the console, his brow furrowing as streams of fragmented Vaelor code scrolled across the screen. Beads of sweat formed on his face, trickling down slowly. The decrypted portions were unsettling, words too chilling to ignore. His gaze flicked between the data and the tactical map. Warships converging on their location, drawn by the faint trail left by the destroyed probe, were unmistakably dangerous. They were still cloaked in the shroud of cosmic dust, but even that wasn't enough to guarantee their safety.
Merrick!
Captain Draven's voice cut through the heavy silence like a blade, sharp and urgent.
What have you got?
Marek's fingers hovered over the keys, his pulse quickening.
Sir, it's bad,
he said. He was used to pressure, but this felt different, more immediate.
The Vaelor warships are on an intercept course. The probe's destruction left an energy trail, weak, but it's enough for their sensors.
Draven muttered a curse, his gaze hardening as he leaned over Marek's console.
How long until they're on us?
Merrick swallowed, his throat dry.
Maybe 40 minutes. Less if they're running full power.
Grayson's eyes narrowed, her jaw tight with frustration.
Can we outmaneuver them?
She asked, her gaze flicking from the tactical display to Draven. Merrick hesitated.
There's one option.
He began slowly.
The asteroid field. It could hide us, but navigating it, that's a different story.
Kara, standing near the viewport, her eyes fixed on the distant shapes of the asteroids, turned toward them.
The field,
she said quietly, the knot in her stomach tightening.
Could it give us a chance?
Draven followed her gaze, his eyes darkening with the weight of the decision.
It's possible, he admitted. The rocks aren't just debris, they're spinning, some with gravity strong enough to mess with our systems. A wrong move and we're space dust.
Grayson's brow furrowed as she analyzed the tactical display. The Vaelor fleet's trajectory was closing in, relentless.
We don't have much choice.
Her voice hardening.
If we stay here, they'll catch us. The asteroid field is our best shot.
The Argus adjusted its course, the engines humming low, as the asteroid field loomed closer. Outside the viewport, jagged rocks spun in slow, menacing arcs, some the size of small ships, others small enough to be swept away by the ship's path. They were unpredictable, dangerous, and the field itself felt like a graveyard. Grayson moved beside Merrick, her sharp gaze scanning the holographic map.
Keep those thrusters minimal. Stay sharp. We don't have room for mistakes.
The bridge fell into a hushed silence as the crew worked with tense precision. The faint hum of the ship's systems and the soft beeping of consoles were the only sounds in the otherwise heavy stillness. The ship moved closer to the maze of asteroids, and Kara felt her breath quicken. A massive asteroid, nearly the size of a small city, drifted perilously close to their path. She couldn't help but tense.
Is the stabilizer compensating for that shift?
She asked, her voice tight with concern.
It's holding,
Merrick responded.
but the field is volatile. We'll have to be fast.
The ship lurched suddenly, dodging an asteroid that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Kara gripped the back of Marek's chair, her knuckles whitening.
We're close.
She muttered to herself, feeling the surge of adrenaline.
How much longer?
Draven's voice, calm but firm, cut through the tension.
Stay focused. We're not out yet.
As the Argus pressed deeper into the asteroid field, the ship's movements became more cautious. Each turn, each adjustment of the thrusters felt like a test. Kara, Grayson, and Draven knew that their survival hinged on every decision they made in these critical moments. The stars outside the viewport began to fade into the chaotic mass of tumbling rocks. The Argus was hidden, for now, but everyone on the bridge understood the danger wasn't over. It had only just begun. Kara stepped back to the tactical display, her expression focused, but inwardly taut. She thought of the rumors she'd heard about the Fringe, phantom signals, derelicts drifting for centuries, unnatural distortions in reality itself. None of it mattered now. As the Argus adjusted its course, the bridge fell into a tense rhythm. Outside, the chaotic expanse of the Fringe loomed closer, a twisting labyrinth of shimmering anomalies.
Gravitational fluctuations increasing. Stabilizers are compensating, but it's going to get rough.
The viewport showed the stars beyond twisting slightly as the ship approached the anomaly's edge. Kara clenched her fists, her pulse quickening. Grayson glanced at her crew. The quiet focus on their faces was both reassuring and heartbreaking. She opened her mouth to speak, but decided against it. The Argus slipped into the Fringe, the starlight outside fading into a kaleidoscope of shifting shadows. Every crew member felt the same silent truth: this was a gamble with no guarantees. And with every passing moment, the stakes soared higher. The command center at the Terran Central Control Station, the beating heart of the Space Interstellar Alliance, SIA, buzzed with quiet urgency. Holographic displays pulsed in shades of blue and amber, projecting star maps, fleet movements, and status updates from across the galaxy. The low hum of machinery and clipped voices of officers filled the room, a fragile layer of order barely masking the tension beneath. Callista stood at the main console, her sharp gaze scanning the endless streams of data scrolling past. The usual rhythm of the station felt heavier today, every new update fueling a gnawing sense of unease. Something was wrong. She couldn't shake it.
Asher,
she called, her tone precise but tight, as if speaking louder might crack the air.
What's the status on those Vaelor movements?
At a nearby terminal, Asher turned, his face illuminated by the glow of a tactical map. A furrow etched deep into his brow.
Increased activity near border stations. No direct engagements yet.
But he hesitated, his voice lowering. Callista pressed her lips into a thin line. She'd seen this before, small, calculated steps that always preceded a larger move.
Flag the patterns,
she ordered.
I want to know what they're setting up before it's too late.
Before Asher could respond, a sharp beep from her console cut through the tension. Callista's eyes snapped to the display as a transmission came through. Her pulse quickened at the flashing red header, distress signal, Argus. Her stomach tightened as she read the details. The Fringe. The ship was diverting into the lawless expanse to evade Vaelor warships. She straightened, forcing her voice to ring out clearly across the room.
Commander Grayson has sent a distress signal. The Argus is heading into the Fringe to avoid pursuit. What's the nearest IA presence?
Asher scanned his display.
The Falcon and the Vanguard, he replied, pointing to two blinking markers on the map.
Callista clenched her fists, her mind already weighing the cost. She knew what failure would mean, not just for the Argus, but for the fragile stability the SIA had worked so hard to maintain. She exhaled sharply.
We don't have a choice. Send the orders. They're to run decoy maneuvers near the Vaelor border, draw their attention away from the Argus.
An officer at a nearby console interrupted, his voice cutting through the tension. Channel open to Captain Draven, sir. Asher stepped forward, his movements deliberate. The room fell silent as the comms link engaged, static crackling faintly before clearing. His voice carried the weight of authority, but was measured, almost reassuring.
Captain Draven, this is General Asher. We've received your distress call and are dispatching support immediately. Hold your position as best you can and continue evasive maneuvers as necessary.
For a moment, only the faint hum of the command center filled the air. Then, Draven's voice came through, steady and composed, despite the dire circumstances.
Understood, General. We'll do what we can to stay ahead of them.
Grayson.
Asher began, his voice measured but firm.
What is the nature of your mission? The Argus was flagged for low-priority exploration.
There was a pause, brief but charged. Grayson squared her shoulders, the flicker of hesitation in her eyes, replaced by determination.
Sir, Kara Lorne is aboard.
The command center fell into stunned silence.
Kara Lorne? The ambassador's daughter? This changes everything.
Grayson continued, urgency sharpening her voice.
We were en route to Nix 12 under strict orders to avoid detection by the Vaelor. We've diverted into the Fringe to evade their warships, but we're at risk of being cornered.
The general exhaled slowly. Kara's capture would be catastrophic, a political disaster, and a strategic nightmare.
The ambassador's daughter?
Asher's voice cut through the tense air of the command center, disbelief sharpening each word.
Why wasn't this disclosed in the official logs?
Grayson's hologram flickered slightly, the faint static matching the weight of her reply.
It was a classified escort mission, General. Kara is en route to Nix 12 for critical negotiations. These orders came directly from Ambassador Lorne himself.
Asher's fists clenched behind his back as he processed the revelation, his jaw tightening.
Ambassador Lorne is playing a dangerous game.
He muttered, his voice low but edged with frustration. Grayson's holographic form remained steady, her resolve cutting through the tension.
We'll hold out as long as we can, General. Kara understands the stakes. She's prepared for what's ahead.
Asher's voice hardened, each word deliberate.
Make sure she stays that way, Commander. The Vaelor can't know she's on board.
Grayson nodded sharply, her image flickering as the connection strained.
Understood, sir. We won't let you down.
The hologram dissolved, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Callista stepped closer, her brow furrowed in thought.
General, if the Vaelor escalate.
They already are.
Asher interrupted. Turned to the tactical display, where the Argus's marker blinked at the edge of the Fringe. Surrounding it, 3 pulsing red indicators showed the advancing Vaelor warships.
Coordinate with the Falcon and Vanguard. Their decoy maneuvers need to be flawless. If they can pull the Vaelor's focus, even for a moment.
Callista's voice softened as she moved closer.
Do you think they'll make it?
Asher's gaze didn't waver from the tactical display.
Grayson knows what's at stake. She'll do her part, and so will we.
He paused, his voice dropping slightly. The room erupted into motion, officers working with precision as they executed his orders. Beyond the blinking lights of the tactical display, the Argus inched closer to the unknown. Asher lingered for a moment longer, his gaze fixed on the map.
We're bringing them home,
he murmured, his voice steady and resolute. Later, General Asher stood in the SIA High Command chamber, surrounded by the flickering holograms of leaders from across the galaxy. The dim lighting cast long shadows, amplifying the weight of the moment. The figures before him were stern, their collective authority bearing down like a silent judgment. At the forefront, Ambassador Lorne's hologram stabilized. His impassive demeanor masked the tension simmering beneath the surface.
General.
Lorne began, his voice smooth but edged with authority.
I assume you've been briefed regarding the Argus.
Asher's jaw tightened. His sharp gaze locked on the ambassador.
You concealed the true nature of the Argus's mission. I understand the need for discretion, Ambassador, but this was reckless.
Lorne's expression remained calm, though his tone carried a subtle defensiveness.
The decision to classify the mission was not made lightly. Nix-12's alliance is pivotal, not just for this conflict, but for the survival of the SIA. Kara's role is critical.
Asher stepped forward, his voice sharp.
And by keeping us in the dark, you've put her and everyone aboard that ship in unnecessary danger. The Vaelor aren't known for their restraint, and they're closing in.
For a moment, the ambassador's composure faltered, a flicker of raw emotion crossing his face.
Kara volunteered for this mission. She knew the risks and accepted them. Do you think I don't question my choice? That I don't wonder if I've sent my daughter to her death?
The chamber fell silent, the faint hum of the projections, the only sound. General Voss, his grizzled features framed by the military council hologram, broke the silence.
Enough. This isn't the time for debate. What are our immediate options to secure the Argus and ensure the mission succeeds?
Asher turned to Voss.
We've dispatched reinforcements to assist the Argus. Commander Callista is coordinating assets to counter the increased Vaelor activity. We're creating an opening for the Argus to reach Nix-12, but the situation remains volatile.
Voss's hologram flickered as he gave a curt nod.
Good, but if the Vaelor escalate, we'll need to be prepared for a broader conflict.
Lorne spoke again, his voice softer, but no less determined.
Kara must reach Nix-12 unharmed. If this mission fails, the consequences will echo across the sector.
Asher met Lorne's gaze, his expression unwavering.
I understand, Ambassador. You have my word we'll do everything in our power to ensure she gets there safely.
A ripple of acknowledgement moved through the assembled leaders, their holograms flickering faintly as the meeting drew to a close. The lights in the chamber dimmed further, casting Asher in shadow as he lingered by the tactical map. Lorne's holographic image flickered, a faint shimmer of static lending a ghostly finality to his departure. As the transmission cut out, the command center remained eerily quiet. Officers exchanged uncertain glances, processing the gravity of Asher's words and the mission that now rested squarely on their shoulders. Callista broke the stillness, her voice soft but steady.
Orders, General?
The question snapped the room into motion. Consoles beeped to life, and the hum of coordinated activity filled the air. Officers dived into their tasks with disciplined precision, the command center transforming into a hive of determined effort. Asher remained still for a moment, his dark eyes scanning the room, before striding toward the towering tactical display. The holographic map glowed with an intricate lattice of star systems, trade routes, and uncharted sectors. Pulsing red icons marked Vaelor fleet movements, dangerously close to the SIA borders. The display shifted, zooming in on clusters of Vaelor ships maneuvering with unsettling precision. Their formations adjusted like a predator testing prey, inching closer to weak points in the SIA's defenses. Asher's brow furrowed as he studied the patterns, his mind already running scenarios. The war room aboard the station buzzed with controlled chaos as General Asher reviewed fleet positions on the central holodisplay. His sharp gaze shifted between the blinking red markers representing Vaelor movements and the lone signal of the Argus, stranded in the Fringe sector.
We need an immediate response,
he said.
What assets are within proximity?
The closest ship is Captain Lyle's survey vessel. Beyond that, we've got 2 cruisers docked at Midstation Gamma. The 7th Fleet is 2 sectors out, but their progress is delayed by Vaelor blockades.
Asher scowled.
Lyle's a surveyor, not a combat officer.
Asher ran a hand down his face, exhaling slowly.
We don't have a choice. If we wait for the 7th Fleet, the Argus is as good as lost. If Lyle coordinates with the cruisers, they might hold the line long enough. The Argus has to keep moving, and those cruisers can cover their retreat.
Moments later, the holodisplay shifted to show the flickering image of Captain Lyle. He stood aboard his survey ship's cramped bridge, the stark lighting highlighting the faint lines of exhaustion on his face.
General Asher,
Lyle greeted.
This is an unexpected call.
No time for pleasantries, Captain,
Asher said, cutting to the chase.
The Argus is in immediate danger, pursued by Vaelor warships. You're the closest asset we have.
Lyle's brow furrowed.
General, with all due respect, we're a survey vessel. My crew isn't trained for combat.
I'm aware, Asher interrupted, his voice softening slightly. But you're not alone. 2 cruisers from Mid-Station Gamma will rendezvous with you. Your primary job is to gather intel and provide support. The fleet will reinforce you once they break through the blockades.
Lyle hesitated, glancing over his shoulder at his bridge crew. Their faces mirrored his uncertainty.
Understood. We'll do what we can.
Good, Asher replied. I'm counting on you.
The connection ended, leaving him staring at the holodisplay. He could still see Lyle's face, the unspoken fear behind his resolve. The Wayfarer approached the designated rendezvous point, its sensors humming as they scanned the chaotic region of the Fringe. The vessel, though not built for combat, moved with a cautious precision honed through years of survey missions in treacherous territories. Captain Lyle sat in his command chair, his sharp eyes fixed on the main display, showing the faint signature of the Argus emerging from the swirling void.
Steady as she goes.
Lyle muttered, his voice low but firm.
I don't like this, Captain. The anomalies here are off the charts.
Noted, Torres.
Lyle replied without turning.
But we have our orders.
The crew worked in silence, each movement calculated and deliberate. The atmosphere on the bridge was tense but focused. Years of exploring uncharted space had taught them the value of discipline.
Captain, we're picking up something.
Ensign Grant called from the sensor station.
An energy spike. It's not Vaelor.
Lyle's eyes narrowed.
On screen.
The main display flickered and shifted to show a faint energy signature pulsing erratically amidst the backdrop of stars and cosmic dust.
What do you make of it?
Lyle asked, directing his question to Torres. Torres studied the readings.
It's unstable. Could be a remnant of an old jump gate or some kind of residual energy field.
Or a trap.
Lyle added, his gaze never leaving the screen.
Possibly.
Torres agreed. Lyle tapped his fingers on the armrest, considering their next move.
Maintain course but keep our shields up. We're not here to engage unless absolutely necessary.
Aye, Captain.
As they drew closer to the Argus, its outline became more distinct, a sleek silhouette against the chaotic backdrop of the Fringe. The survey ship's exterior bore signs of recent skirmishes, scorch marks, and patches where hull plating had been hastily repaired.
Establish comms with Captain Draven,
Lyle ordered. A moment later, Draven's image appeared on a smaller screen to Lyle's right. His expression was grim but resolute.
Lyle, good to see you made it.
Draven said without preamble.
We're here to help get you through this mess.
Lyle replied.
We're running out of time.
Draven said urgently.
Vaelor ships are closing in fast. We need to move now.
Understood.
Lyle responded.
We'll follow your lead.
Draven nodded curtly before cutting the transmission. The bridge crew exchanged glances, but remained silent as they prepared for whatever lay ahead. Lyle adjusted himself in his chair and took a deep breath.
All hands, brace for tactical maneuvers.
The Wayfarer and Argus moved as one unit, navigating through the Fringe with an unspoken coordination born from shared purpose and imminent danger.
3 Vaelor interceptors, closing in. Scanners show they're already trying to lock tractor beams on the Argus. Energy readings indicate plasma weapons are charging,
Grant reported. The bridge crew tensed, their eyes flicking between their stations and the main display, where 3 red markers bore down on the Argus's flickering blue signal.
Get me a tactical overlay,
Lyle ordered, his voice calm but edged with urgency. Tora's fingers moved deftly across her console, bringing up a detailed schematic of the surrounding space. The display showed the Argus outpaced and vulnerable, with the Wayfarer and 3 interceptors closing in fast.
Options.
Lyle asked, scanning the overlay.
None of them are great.
Torres replied.
We could try to draw their fire, but our shields won't hold against sustained plasma hits.
And if they lock those tractor beams?
Lyle pressed. Torres shook her head.
The Argus is done for.
Lyle inhaled sharply, his jaw tightening.
All right, we're not letting that happen. We need to buy them time.
He activated the comms, his voice steady despite the storm brewing around them.
Draven, we see your tail. We're going to create a diversion.
Draven's response came quickly, his tone as grim as the situation warranted.
Roger that, Lyle. We'll make a break for it once you engage.
Lyle ended the transmission and turned to Torres.
Plot an intercept course with those Vaelor ships. Let's draw him off.
Aye, Captain.
Torres said. Lyle stood and spoke into the ship-wide intercom.
All hands, prepare for combat maneuvers. This is going to get rough.
The Wayfarer adjusted its trajectory, engines flaring bright against the dark void as it maneuvered to intercept the Vaelor ships. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of systems coming online and the faint tension-filled breaths of the crew.
Vaelor interceptors are within range,
Grant reported.
Shields up.
The Wayfarer's shields shimmered into place just as they came into the interceptor's firing distance.
Target their weapons systems.
Lyle ordered, his tone measured.
Fire. Full burst.
The Wayfarer's laser cannons lit up, bright lances of energy streaking toward the interceptors. The first volley struck true, hitting the lead ship's plasma cannon and erupting in a small explosion. The ship wavered in its course, plasma energy dissipating in erratic bursts.
One down.
Torres noted with satisfaction, but her expression remained tense. Lyle's eyes narrowed as the remaining two interceptors veered sharply toward the Wayfarer.
And now we've got their attention.
The interceptors closed in, plasma weapons charging. The bridge shook as the Wayfarer's shields absorbed the first barrage of fire.
Shields holding, but they won't last long,
Grant warned.
Stay focused,
Lyle said, gripping the armrests of his chair.
Torres, fire another volley. Aim for their engines.
Aye, Captain.
Torres said, lining up the next shots. The Wayfarer's cannons blazed again, but this time the interceptors were ready. They weaved through the barrage, sending another wave of plasma bolts crashing into the Wayfarer's shields.
Direct hit on the shields. They're down to 45%.
Grant called out.
Captain, the Argus is moving.
On the display, the Argus could be seen accelerating, taking advantage of the diversion to slip through the chaos.
Good,
Lyle muttered.
Now let's keep these Vaelor bastards busy a little longer.
The interceptors bore down on the Wayfarer, but Lyle's crew held steady, determined to buy the Argus every precious second it needed to escape. The Wayfarer veered into action, its smaller, nimbler frame weaving deftly through the Fringe's dense debris fields. Captain Lyle's hands moved instinctively over the controls, guiding the ship with a precision honed from years of navigating treacherous territories. To starboard, the Argus, larger and more heavily armored, banked hard to port, its engines flaring brightly as it twisted to avoid the Vaelor interceptor's emerald green tractor beams. The angular shapes of the enemy ships closed in relentlessly, their sleek designs slicing through space like predators homing in on their prey.
Captain, the Argus is struggling to keep up.
Torres called from her console. At the weapons station, Grant adjusted the targeting systems, his fingers flying over the controls.
Lining up another shot,
He announced.
Make it count.
Lyle urged, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Wayfarer's dual laser cannons roared to life, spitting searing bolts of energy at the closest interceptor. One shot grazed its hull, sending up a burst of sparks, while another struck true, puncturing its shielding.
Stay focused.
Lyle snapped, his tone sharp.
We're not done yet.
The Wayfarer executed a tight barrel roll, narrowly dodging a burst of plasma fire that flared through the debris field. Grant unleashed another volley, his shots precise. The glowing streaks of laser fire found their mark, punching through the shields of one of the interceptors. A small explosion erupted on its port side, sending it spiraling off course.
Good shooting,
Lyle said, his focus unwavering.
Let's finish this.
The remaining interceptor, realizing the tide of the skirmish was shifting, pressed its attack with renewed ferocity. Plasma bolts streaked toward the Wayfarer, each impact making the ship shudder violently. The shields flared in protest, flickering under the strain.
Shields down to 23%.
Torres warned.
We can't take another hit like that.
Lyle's grip on the controls tightened.
We're not going to. Grant, target their engines. We need to cripple them.
Already on it.
Grant replied, lining up the shot. Meanwhile, the Argus continued its evasive maneuvers, its engines blazing as it wove through the debris, each twist and turn a desperate bid to avoid the tractor beams and plasma fire. On its bridge, Captain Draven coordinated his crew with military precision, the tension etched into every face as they fought to keep their ship in the fight. The Wayfarer darted ahead, drawing the last interceptor's fire.
Now.
Lyle barked. Grant fired. The shot hit dead center on the interceptor's engines, sending a cascade of sparks and flames spewing from the Vaelor ship. It slowed dramatically, its thruster sputtering as it lost power.
Direct hit.
Grant confirmed. The interceptor drifted helplessly, its systems failing one by one. Lyle exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly, though his gaze remained locked on the display.
Torres, status on the Argus.
They've cleared the worst of it,
Torres reported, her tone reflecting a mix of relief and exhaustion.
Engines are holding steady, and they're out of range of the tractor beams.
Good,
Lyle said, his voice firm.
Grant, keep an eye on sensors for any additional hostiles. Torres, coordinate with the Argus and plot us a course out of here.
The Wayfarer slowed to match the Argus, the two ships moving in tandem once more as they navigated the last stretch of the Fringe. Though battered and battle-worn, both ships had made it through the skirmish intact. On the bridge, Lyle allowed himself a brief moment to breathe, though his sharp gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. He knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. The Wayfarer lurched violently as a sudden explosion rocked its hull. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the lights flickered before plunging the bridge into darkness. The hum of the engines died, replaced by the eerie silence of a ship gone dark.
What the hell was that?
Tora's voice cut through the gloom, sharp with panic.
Secondary explosion from the fight.
Lyle barked, his fingers dancing over dead controls.
We've lost power.
Emergency lights blinked on, casting an ominous red glow across the bridge. The crew's faces were masks of grim determination, their expressions lit by the flickering lights.
We've got multiple hull breaches,
he replied.
Engines are offline, and we're venting atmosphere in several sections.
Seal those sections and reroute power to critical systems.
Lyle commanded.
I'm on it.
Torres responded. Another explosion rattled through the ship, sending a shudder through its frame. The deck plates vibrated underfoot, a constant reminder of their precarious situation.
The Argus is moving out of range,
Grant reported, frustration edging his voice.
They can't see us anymore.
Lyle's jaw tightened.
Activate distress beacons and try to re-establish contact.
Beacons aren't responding. We're completely dark.
Silence fell over the bridge, heavy and suffocating. The Wayfarer drifted aimlessly in space, hidden within the vast expanse of the Fringe's debris fields. The Wayfarer was a scene of barely contained chaos. Sparks showered from exposed wiring, and fires crackled as the crew worked frantically to seal hull breaches and extinguish flames. Smoke filled the corridors, the acrid stench mixing with the adrenaline-fueled tension that hung thick in the air. Ensign Grant, his face streaked with soot and sweat, stood amidst the chaos, barking orders.
Get that bulkhead sealed now.
He shouted over the din, pointing to a breach where coolant vapor hissed ominously. Torres moved with purpose, guiding injured crew members to the sick bay. Her uniform was scorched, her hair matted with sweat, but her demeanor remained calm and authoritative.
Easy now,
she said soothingly, supporting a wounded technician whose leg was badly burned.
We'll get you patched up. Just hold on.
With the engines offline, the Wayfarer floated dead in space, its signal lost amidst the turbulent void of the Fringe. The silence outside the hull was almost oppressive, a stark contrast to the chaos inside. On the Argus, Marek's hands flew over his console, frustration creeping into his voice. Draven leaned forward in his chair, his expression carved from stone. His eyes flicked between Marek's console and the tactical display.
Keep broadcasting our position,
he ordered, his tone brooking no argument.
They need to know we're still here.
Beside him, Commander Grayson initiated the transmission.
This is Commander Grayson of the cruiser Argus, calling Wayfarer. Respond if you read us.
The reply was nothing but static, crackling ominously through the comms, a haunting reminder of their isolation in this treacherous sector. As the drifting debris from the destroyed interceptors faded into the darkness, Marek's console emitted a sharp alarm. His voice cut through the tense quiet.
Vaelor main ship's on approach. They found us.
Draven's head snapped toward the tactical display. The sleek forms of 2 Vaelor warships cut through the void with predatory intent. Their energy signatures flared menacingly as plasma and ion cannons came online, targeting the crippled Argus.
Shields to maximum.
Draven barked.
Evasive maneuvers. Don't give them a clean shot.
The Argus pivoted sharply, its engines roaring as the massive ship twisted to avoid the incoming barrage. Plasma fire streaked past, narrowly missing their stern. The vibrations from the near miss rattled the hull, and the bridge crew gripped their consoles as the ship veered.
They're locking on.
Marek's fingers flew across his console as he fought to disrupt the targeting locks. Draven's jaw clenched.
Deploy countermeasures and prep all available weapons.
Explosions erupted in the void as countermeasure pods detonated, releasing dazzling arrays of chaff and flares. The barrage confused the Vaelor targeting systems momentarily, but the warships adjusted quickly, their cannons firing again. Plasma bolts and ion beams crisscrossed through space, closing in on the Argus.
Return fire,
Draven shouted. The Argus's railguns and laser turrets lit up, sending streaks of energy hurtling toward the Vaelor ships. The first volley struck one of the warship's shields, causing it to shimmer and flare. The Argus moved like a cornered predator, dodging and weaving as it unleashed counterattacks. Back on the Wayfarer, Torres and Grant worked furiously to restore power to the engines. Sparks rained down from an overhead conduit as they struggled to reroute damaged circuits.
Come on, come on.
Grant muttered, his hands moving quickly over the control panel.
We're sitting ducks out here.
Torres shot him a glance.
Keep at it. We've done harder repairs in worse situations.
A flicker of power surged through the system, and the Wayfarer shuddered to life. And the hum of the engines returned, faint but steady. We've got partial power, Torres reported, her voice laced with urgency. Lyle, standing at the center of the chaos, gripped the back of his chair and gave a curt nod.
Good enough. Get us moving. We're not leaving the Argus to fight this alone.
The Wayfarer's engines flared as it adjusted course, speeding toward the Argus. Static crackled through the comms before Draven's voice cut in.
Wayfarer, do you copy?
Lyle grabbed the comms mic.
We're back online, Argus. Moving to support your position.
Glad to hear it.
Draven replied, his relief palpable even through the distortion.
We've got company, and they're not here to negotiate.
The Wayfarer closed the distance, its cannons charging as it joined the fray. The Resolute and the Sparrowhawk arrived in a flash of sublight brilliance, their engines flaring as they immediately moved into defensive positions around the beleaguered Argus. The cavalry had arrived, and they wasted no time engaging the enemy. Captain Wren's commanding voice echoed through the Resolute's bridge. Her tone carried the weight of experience, rallying her crew into action. The SIA cruisers unleashed a coordinated barrage of firepower. Laser batteries lit up the void, their concentrated beams lancing toward the Vaelor warships, while missile volleys streaked across the stars, leaving trails of fiery destruction in their wake. Plasma and ion bolts from the Vaelor fleet answered in kind, transforming the battlefield into a chaotic storm of light and energy. On board the Argus, Draven stood steady, his sharp gaze fixed on the tactical display as the SIA reinforcements engaged the enemy with relentless precision.
Maintain evasive maneuvers.
He ordered his bridge crew.
We need to keep them off balance and buy ourselves time.
Grayson monitored the display, a flicker of relief crossing her face as she observed the Resolute and Sparrowhawk taking the brunt of the enemy fire.
The Vaelor fleet's focus has shifted to the cruisers,
she noted.
Good.
Draven replied with a sharp nod.
Let's use this time to assess our damage and see if we can provide support to the Wayfarer.
Outside, the battle intensified. The SIA cruisers moved with practiced precision, their pilots and gunners working in perfect harmony. The Resolute's shields flared as it absorbed plasma fire, retaliating with a salvo of missiles that tore into the enemy ranks. The Sparrowhawk, more agile, weaved through enemy fire, its laser turrets tracking and destroying Vaelor drones attempting to flank the line. On the Resolute's bridge, Lieutenant Voss worked furiously at his station, coordinating the attack patterns.
Focus fire on that destroyer,
he directed, highlighting a heavily armed Vaelor ship bearing down on their formation. Acknowledged, came the crisp reply from weapons control. The targeted destroyer shuddered under the relentless assault. Its shields flickered, then collapsed entirely under the focused barrage. A final missile strike detonated near its engine core, causing a catastrophic explosion that sent fragments of its hull spiraling into the void. Meanwhile, on the Wayfarer, Torres worked with feverish determination in the engineering bay, her sleeves rolled up and her face streaked with grease and sweat. Sparks flew as she bypassed damaged circuits and rerouted power. On the bridge, Grant kept a wary eye on their surroundings, his fingers hovering over the weapons controls. Lyle, standing resolute at the center of the bridge, refused to let the tension crack his focus. Lights flickered and stabilized, the engines gave a steady thrum, and the tactical display reactivated.
Shields up.
Lyle barked as soon as the power level stabilized. The Wayfarer's shield shimmered back into existence just in time to intercept a stray plasma bolt. The bridge shook under the impact, but the shields held, their energy dissipating the blast. Back in the thick of the battle, Captain Ran aboard the Resolute seized an opportunity as a Vaelor frigate broke formation, attempting to retreat. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing.
Pursue that frigate. Don't let them regroup.
The Resolute's engines flared as it surged forward, joined by the Sparrowhawk. Their combined firepower tore into the fleeing Vaelor ship, overwhelming its shields and igniting its fuel cells. The frigate erupted into a brilliant explosion, scattering debris across the battlefield. On the Argus's bridge, Draven exhaled, his sharp eyes scanning the tactical display.
Grayson, coordinate with the Wayfarer. Let's regroup and prepare for a counteroffensive if needed.
On the Wayfarer, Lyle's voice rang through the comms.
Torres, keep the engines steady. Grant, maintain watch for any stragglers. We're not in the clear yet.
Both ships maneuvered into formation, battered but intact, their crews bracing for whatever came next. As the battle raged on around them, the combined efforts of the Resolute and Sparrowhawk were slowly tipping the scales in their favor. Both ships maneuvered into formation, battered but intact, their crews bracing for whatever came next. As the battle raged on around them, the combined efforts of the Resolute and Sparrowhawk were slowly tipping the scales in their favor. However, victory was far from certain. A Vaelor destroyer maneuvered into position and unleashed a devastating salvo against the Sparrowhawk. The smaller SIA ship shuddered violently under the assault.
Shields are failing.
Rourke's tactical officer shouted.
Divert all power to defensive systems.
Rourke ordered, gripping his chair as the ship rocked from another hit. But it was too late. The Sparrowhawk shuddered violently as another salvo from the Vaelor destroyer tore through its weakened shields. The bridge was a cacophony of alarms and shouting as systems overloaded and sparks rained down from exposed panels.
Shields are down.
The tactical officer yelled, panic creeping into his voice.
Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4.
Evacuate those decks immediately.
Captain Rourke barked, his knuckles white as he gripped the arms of his command chair.
Engines to maximum. Get us out of their line of fire.
The Sparrowhawk tried to bank away, its thrusters flaring in protest, but the Vaelor destroyer pursued mercilessly, its plasma cannons charging for another strike. A moment later, a blinding burst of green energy slammed into the Sparrowhawk's aft section, shearing off part of the hull. Explosions cascaded along the ship's spine as fire and debris erupted into the void.
Engines offline.
The helm officer shouted, "We're dead in the water." Captain Rourke's face hardened as the realization hit him.
Abandon ship,
He said.
Get the crew to the escape pods, now!
His officers hesitated for only a moment before springing into action, issuing the evacuation order across the ship. Rourke stayed rooted in his chair, his eyes locked on the tactical display. The Sparrowhawk had bought precious time for the Resolute and the rest of the fleet, but at the cost of its own survival. On board the Resolute, Captain Wren watched in grim silence as the Sparrowhawk took its final hit. Her jaw clenched, and she forced herself to focus on the battle still raging around them.
Lieutenant Voss, can we cover their escape pods?
She asked, her tone sharp and controlled.
Working on it.
Voss replied.
I'm dispatching a wing of drones to intercept any incoming fire near the pods.
Good. And target that destroyer, make them pay for this.
The Resolute's railguns and missile batteries roared to life, sending a withering barrage toward the Vaelor destroyer. The enemy ship's shields flared and buckled under the relentless assault. A missile found its mark, detonating near the destroyer's main power core. The massive ship listed to one side, its engines flickering as secondary explosions rippled through its hull.
Direct hit.
Voss called out, a note of triumph in his voice.
They're losing power.
Finish them off,
Wren ordered coldly. Meanwhile, the Argus and Wayfarer worked to regroup and recover. On the Wayfarer's bridge, Lal watched the carnage unfold on his tactical display. His crew had managed to restore most of the ship's systems.
Torres, what's our status?
Lal asked, his tone urgent.
Shields at 50%. Engines fully operational and weapons systems online.
Torres replied.
Good. We're rejoining the fight,
Lal said.
Grant, target the Vaelor destroyer. Let's take some of the heat off the Resolute.
The Wayfarer surged forward, its laser cannons blazing. The coordinated attack between the Wayfarer and the Resolute overwhelmed the already damaged Vaelor destroyer. The Argus and the Resolute dug deeper into the rim, their engines straining against the dense pockets of cosmic debris. Captain Draven's face was etched with concentration as he maneuvered the Argus through the treacherous terrain, each command sharp and decisive.
Keep those shields rotating,
he ordered.
We can't afford another direct hit.
On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Wren coordinated with Lieutenant Voss, who was furiously working at the tactical station.
Vaelor warship is gaining.
Voss reported, his voice tense but controlled.
They are relentless.
Wren nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Plasma fire from the pursuing Vaelor warship lit up the dark expanse, narrowly missing their targets but getting closer with each volley. Then, in the far distance, a massive silhouette began to take shape against the backdrop of stars. Lieutenant Merrick on the Argus was the first to notice it.
Captain,
Merrick called out, his tone a mix of awe and apprehension.
I'm picking up an unknown structure ahead. It looks like a battleship.
Draven squinted at the view screen. The derelict battleship loomed large, its design unlike anything recorded in their databases. Twisted metal and gaping holes suggested it had been adrift for centuries, if not longer.
What in the void is that?
Draven muttered under his breath, before giving a more direct order.
Merrick, get me a full scan. I want to know what we're dealing with.
As Marek's fingers flew over his console, Wren's voice crackled through the comms channel.
Draven, are you seeing this?
Affirmative,
Draven replied.
Unknown design. Could be ancient tech or something worse.
Think it's Vaelor?
Wren asked.
No idea,
Draven admitted.
But if we can get behind it, maybe it'll give us some cover.
The two ships adjusted their course slightly, aiming for the derelict battleship while still evading incoming fire from their relentless pursuer. The closer they got, the more details emerged, the alien hull marked with unknown symbols and battle scars from long-forgotten wars.
Any readings on life signs or power?
Draven queried. Merrick shook his head.
Negative on life signs. Minimal residual energy readings. Whatever powered this thing is long gone.
Draven exchanged a glance with Grayson, who stood nearby, her face set in determination.
Looks like we're about to find out what secrets this ghost ship holds,
she said grimly. With no other choice but forward, both human ships continued their flight toward the unknown battleship's looming shadow, hoping it might offer some respite from their relentless pursuer. A moment of silence hung in space. The wreckage of the fierce battle floated silently, illuminated by distant stars. The remaining Vaelor ship, hardly damaged, loomed ominously. The Argus, holding on through sheer determination, maintained a fragile stability. The Wayfarer, battered and broken, sent distress signals to both SIA ships. Escape pods launched from its hull, like desperate lifeboats. The Resolute and the Argus moved swiftly. Missiles and long-range lasers streaked across the void from the SIA cruiser, aimed at keeping the Vaelor ship at bay. As the Wayfarer's crew scrambled to abandon ship, explosions erupted throughout its corridors. Fire spread uncontrollably, consuming everything in their path. Despite the chaos, most of the crew made it to safety. The Wayfarer shuddered violently as its structural integrity failed. Finally, with a deafening roar that reverberated through space, it exploded into a brilliant fireball. Debris scattered in all directions. The last Vaelor battleship, battered but relentless, set a final intercept course toward the SIA ships. Just as Captain Draven and Captain Wren prepared for the inevitable confrontation, their sensors flared with new contacts. Two more Vaelor warships emerged from the void, joining their compatriot in a deadly formation.
Brace for impact,
Draven shouted, his voice echoing through the bridge of the Argus.
All hands to battle stations.
The tension on the Resolute mirrored that of the Argus. Lieutenant Voss's eyes were fixed on the tactical display, tracking the incoming threats. Voss said, urgency coloring his voice. As if on cue, space around them lit up with new signatures. The warships from Earth had arrived. The Vanguard, Aegis, and Indomitable surged forward, their engines flaring as they closed the distance to join the fray.
All ships, engage.
Admiral Cade's command came through loud and clear. The SIA fleet opened fire with everything they had. Railguns from the East ships, laser fire, and missile salvos crisscrossed the dark expanse of space, turning it into a hellish battlefield. The Vaelor ships retaliated with equal ferocity. The combined might of their plasma weapons and ion beams battered against SIA shields. The Resolute took the brunt of an enemy salvo. Its shields flickered and then collapsed under the sustained assault.
Get us out of their firing line.
The Resolute shuddered as it fired emergency thrusters, narrowly avoiding another volley that would have torn it apart. The battle between the SIA and Vaelor fleets raged on, an epic clash of technology and tactics. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Admiral Cade coordinated his fleet's movements, his eyes flicking between tactical readouts and the chaos outside. Focus fire! The SIA ships responded with volleys of laser beams and missile salvos. Explosions rippled across the void as missiles found their marks, but the Vaelor shields absorbed much of the impact, glowing briefly before stabilizing. The Argus, maneuvering nimbly despite its size, weaved through the battlefield. Captain Draven's commands came swiftly.
Evasive maneuvers.
As the Argus peeled away from the main conflict, another SIA ship took a devastating hit. Plasma fire engulfed its hull, ripping it apart in a fiery explosion. The crew's cries echoed through comms before cutting to static. Meanwhile, the alien derelict hung ominously in space. Amidst the chaotic dance of warships and laser fire, escape pods launched from the beleaguered SIA vessels. The pods, tiny specks against the vast backdrop of space, drifted helplessly as the battle raged around them. Plasma bolts and missile explosions illuminated their paths, casting fleeting shadows on their surfaces. The derelict warship's gravity field began to assert its influence, pulling the escape pods inexorably towards its darkened hull. One by one, they floated closer, their trajectories bending under the ship's unseen grasp. They donned their helmets and checked their weapons, faces set with determination. The pod shuddered as it made contact with the derelict's surface, a dull thud echoing through its cramped interior. The hatch hissed open, revealing the eerie expanse of the ancient vessel. Shadows danced along the walls as emergency lights flickered on and off, casting a ghostly glow on everything they touched. The men moved cautiously, their boots making soft thuds on the metallic floor.
Stay alert.
Captain Lyle's voice crackled through their comms.
We don't know what's waiting for us in here,
he muttered. Torres followed closely behind, weapon at the ready. Just keep moving. Aaron Voss trailed them, his tactical mind racing with possibilities. Ina Taylor brought up the rear, her comms equipment buzzing with static as she tried to establish a link with the outside world.
No signal yet. This hull must be interfering.
They pressed forward, each step taking them deeper into the derelict's bowels. Strange symbols adorned the walls, ancient runes that none of them recognized, but all felt compelled to decipher. As they turned a corner, a massive chamber opened up before them. At its center stood an enormous console, pulsating with energy. The room hummed with a low frequency that seemed to resonate within their very bones. Plasma fire streaked across the void, illuminating the battleground in erratic bursts. The Argus and a lone SIA cruiser, the Indomitable, weaved through the chaos, their shields flickering under relentless Vaelor assault. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Renner's focus was unyielding.
Return fire! Target their engines!
He barked, while his crew scrambled to comply. 2 Vaelor warships, despite being heavily damaged, continued their aggressive advance. Their plasma cannons charged with a menacing glow.
We won't last much longer.
Marek's voice wavered as he monitored the incoming fire on the Argus's console.
Shields at 20%.
Draven's jaw clenched.
Hold steady. We need more time.
The Vaelor ships positioned themselves for a final blow, their weapons systems locked onto the SIA vessels. Draven's eyes darted to the derelict battleship looming nearby, a silent sentinel in the midst of destruction. Just as the Vaelor prepared to unleash their barrage, an intense light erupted from the derelict. A colossal energy beam lanced out, cutting through space with deadly precision. The first Vaelor ship disintegrated instantly under its sheer power, debris scattering into the void. The second Vaelor ship attempted evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. The energy beam shifted and struck true once more, annihilating it in a brilliant explosion. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining SIA ships drifted amidst the wreckage of their foes, awestruck by their unexpected salvation. Captain Draven exhaled a shaky breath, his eyes fixed on the now quiet derelict ship.
What? What just happened?
Marek's voice broke through the stunned silence. Draven shook his head slowly.
I don't know, but we owe it our lives.
The bridge of the Argus hummed with a tension that bordered on disbelief. The sudden destruction of the Vaelor ships had left the crew in stunned silence, their eyes locked on the derelict battleship. As the shock began to ebb, a faint signal crackled through the comm.
Captain.
Marek called.
We're receiving a transmission.
Draven's head turned sharply towards the communications console.
Put it through,
he ordered, his tone measured but edged with urgency. Static filled the bridge for a moment, then Lyle's voice came through, strained but triumphant.
Draven, it's Lyle. We managed to activate the weapons aboard the derelict. Those beams, they're ancient tech, incredibly powerful. We took out the Vaelor ships.
Draven's grip on the armrest loosened as he listened. Relief washed over him, mingling with a newfound respect for Lyle's ingenuity.
You did it.
Draven replied, a hint of admiration in his voice.
You saved us all.
There was a brief pause before Lyle responded, his voice steadier now.
It was close. We had to figure out how to interface with their systems, and it wasn't easy. But we managed to bring them online just in time.
Merrick exchanged glances with Grayson, who nodded approvingly. The bridge crew of the Argus began to relax, tension easing from their shoulders. Draven leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on the derelict ship visible through the viewport.
Lyle, can you keep those weapons active? We might need them again if more Vaelor ships show up.
We'll do our best,
Lyle replied.
But these systems are old and unpredictable. We need to be cautious.
Draven nodded thoughtfully, absorbing Lyle's words.
Understood. We'll coordinate from here and make sure we're ready for anything.
The transmission ended with a final burst of static, leaving Draven and his crew in contemplative silence once more. The derelict battleship loomed large before them, its secrets now an unexpected boon in their desperate struggle for survival. As Draven stood up from his chair, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had been given a chance, a fighting chance, and they weren't going to waste it.
All right, everyone,
he called out, drawing his crew's attention back to him.
Let's get to work.
Captain Draven stood at the head of the meeting room table, his eyes scanning the faces of the remaining officers. Grayson, Merrick, and a few others who had survived the recent skirmishes were present. The holographic display projected the image of General Asher on Earth. Draven took a deep breath before he began.
We managed to evade and ultimately neutralize the Vaelor ships thanks to Captain Lyle and his crew aboard the Wayfarer. They activated ancient weapons on a derelict battleship, turning the tide in our favor.
General Asher's face remained stoic, but his eyes revealed a flicker of relief.
Their ingenuity saved us.
What's the current status of Vaelor movements?
Merrick stepped in, pointing to several highlighted areas on the tactical map.
Scans indicate no additional Vaelor ships en route to our position.
Draven nodded appreciatively at Merrick before continuing.
Given this window of opportunity, it's imperative that we proceed to Nix 12 as soon as possible.
Grayson cleared her throat.
The remaining Sia ship is too heavily damaged to escort us. They'll need to return to a shipyard docking station for repairs.
Understood. Prioritize your mission to Nix 12, but ensure your route minimizes any further risks.
Just then, another message came through from Lyle. His face appeared on one of the screens, looking worn but determined.
Draven,
Lyle began.
We've managed to get the engines of the derelict battleship running on very basic power. It's not much, but it's enough for us to move.
Draven raised an eyebrow.
Are you suggesting what I think you are?
Lyle nodded.
I propose that we use the derelict to escort the Argus to Nix 12. Its sheer size and firepower, despite being ancient, could deter any further Vaelor attacks.
The room fell silent as everyone absorbed Lyle's proposal. General Asher's holographic image flickered slightly, his stern expression unchanged.
This is an unprecedented move.
Asher began, his voice steady.
We're talking about relying on a derelict ancient battleship with unknown capabilities and limitations.
Draven nodded, acknowledging the concern.
True, General. But we've seen its firepower. It could be the edge we need to ensure safe passage to Nix 12.
Lyle interjected, his voice carrying a note of urgency.
Look, I know it's a gamble, but we don't have many options. The Vaelor won't stop coming after us. This ship could be our best chance.
What's the status of its systems? How reliable are they?
The engines are functional on minimal power. Weapons systems are partially operational, however, we can't guarantee full stability.
Asher sighed, shaking his head slightly.
Minimal power and partial operations don't inspire confidence. If that ship fails in transit, it could leave both you and the Argus vulnerable.
Grayson spoke up, her tone measured.
We have to weigh the risks against the benefits. The Vaelor ships are likely to regroup and can launch another assault any moment.
Draven looked back at Lyle's determined face on the screen.
What are our alternatives if we don't use this ship?
Lyle shrugged slightly, but didn't break eye contact. Silence filled the room as everyone considered the gravity of their decision. Finally, Draven spoke again, his voice firm.
I believe it's worth the risk. We need every advantage we can get right now.
Very well.
Asher conceded.
We proceed with using the derelict battleship as our escort to Nix 12.
Lyle's face showed relief and determination. Draven took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their collective decision settle over him.
Let's prepare for departure immediately.